This brief presentation focuses specifically on classroom management, and classroom management can prove a little difficult for some counselors because it falls outside the area that they expect to be attending to in the classroom. But as a counselor, if you are brought into the classroom to provide some classroom guidance or some classroom activities, if you're part of the rotation of non-core or encore classes for the students, then a lot of times there will not be an additional teacher in the classroom. And for me as a counselor, I don't want an additional teacher in the classroom. When I have my opportunity to interact with the children or the students, whatever the capacity is, I want that to be my classroom setting. And I want us to have the rules that we've established as our classroom community. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But I want us to be able to set up the community of learners that is conducive to the way I teach and the information that I need to share with my students. So as a counselor, when you step into a classroom, you've got to have good classroom management skills. Many counselors will be concerned about classroom management. They'll say, well, if I enforce rules in the classroom, does that harm my therapeutic relationship with the kids? Or will they view me more as a disciplinarian rather than as a counselor? And finding that balance between being a caring, helping professional and a effective classroom manager can be difficult for some counselors. But how can you do this? How can you manage this balance? There are some key pieces that if you have these in place, you'll be able to have a strong presence in the classroom and you'll be able to manage the classroom effectively. The first is to be prepared, but you also have to be flexible. A person who has a really good plan, who can't deviate from that plan or deal with new situations as they come up, is going to have some trouble. But if you're prepared, you've got a good plan in place, and you're appropriately flexible, you're able to shift to the context that's present in the room when you get there, that evolves as you start to work with the kids, you'll be successful. You have to create a trusting and caring atmosphere. They have to know you care about them. Now, caring about them does not mean you're a doormat. You do not allow them to walk all over you or to the students to just set the tone. You are the leader in the classroom. You create a trusting and caring atmosphere. And part of caring for them is making sure that there is a clear opportunity for learning from everyone. You do that by being consistent. If this is my rule, this is the process, this is the expectations for the class that have been established, then I will consistently follow those expectations and adhere to those pieces. You have to get to know your students. You know who's a leader, for better or for worse, in that classroom. And then you have to work within that structure that is kind of set up in that classroom community of the kids' relationships and interrelationships. You have to have a very well communicated classroom management plan. The kids have to know what the expectations are. The students, I say kids, but really any age, even with adults, people have to know what the expectations are for behaviors in the class and what happens if those expectations are not attended to. When there's a problem behavior, address it directly and immediately. Don't wait and let it stretch out into something that takes over your classroom tone, mood, relationships, and environment. Marzano and Marzano focus on the teacher-student relationship. They say that this is the single most factor to predict effective classroom management. You have to have a strong teacher-student relationship to effectively manage the classroom. And teachers with high-quality student relationships report 31% less discipline concerns. But what is a high-quality relationship? What do we mean by that? You want the kids to enjoy your sessions. You want the kids to feel comfortable approaching you, coming to talk to you. You want the classroom to feel like a safe environment. And you want to be able to teach the lessons you've prepared. You put a lot of time in getting ready for classroom management, and you want to be able to engage with those students and share the information that you plan to share. We're going to come back to that effective relationship in a minute. An effective relationship. An effective relationship is that foundation for being an effective classroom manager, right? According to Marzano and Marzano, and according to what we know to be true in the classroom. So you, as a counselor, got to understand your role in the room and in the community. Your role in that relationship with the students is that of an adult and an educator. Are you friendly? Are you a person they trust and they know cares for them? Absolutely. But you are not strictly their friend. You have a clear purpose and you provide clear guidance in regard to appropriate classroom behavior. There are a lot of different ways to provide this guidance, but it is necessary that you are clear about what you expect from them and how you're going to engage with them. You establish clear learning goals, and there have to be clear and understood consequences for inappropriate behavior. And then when people do well, when your students do well, reinforce it. Positively reinforce good and appropriate behaviors. Here are a couple of comments from teachers, and I'll give you the opportunity to read those, on your own. Let me tell you, if you have a clear expectation for what your class is supposed to be and how people are going to engage with each other in that classroom, and you care about those kids, and then you follow through and you are consistent, you will be effective. The students will respond to you, and they will understand that you are genuine in your caring for them, or of them, caring of them, for them. And they will also understand that there's a sense of reciprocity here. They have expectations they have to attend to in that relationship. There's pieces that they have to bring for everyone to be able to function successfully as a community. We're going to cover a few brief tips and activities that may be helpful to you. One thing that has always been helpful to me is to catch students being good. When you know people are doing right, when people are working hard, point it out. Then reward those people and provide them with that positive reinforcement. When students are behaving inappropriately, prompt appropriate behavior. I say or demand it, but that's really probably a better word there would be or require it. But when you see someone doing something incorrectly or inappropriately, say, do this instead. This is what you should be doing. And when those people correct it, some people, adults, when a student has been doing incorrectly and then they do it correctly, they still, when they're talking to them, are talking about what they were doing incorrectly. Just point out what was done correctly. Say, yes, that is right. Recognize the effort first and then their accuracy. And when building appropriate behavior, reward it as quickly as possible. But as the student incorporates that behavior into self, don't just flood them with rewards. Once they get it and they're doing it, then it requires less attention from you. It's just more the expected behavior at that point. So here's a little activity you could use. As the class starts, draw students' name from piles of scraps of paper with all the names included. The students know this, right? You have a little jar with all your students' names in it. And you pick a name out, but that name is secret. And you tell the students that this secret student activity, what this means is that I'm watching this student the entire class to see how this student is behaving. And if at the end of the class, this student has behaved really well, appropriately, been a strong member of our classroom community, they're going to receive a prize, a small prize. That's it's a little tip as you start to establish your classroom management processes in the class that could be a kind of useful activity. To me, this is what's key. You must create a community of caring and sharing. So at the beginning of your cycle, the guidance cycle, the beginning of the year, whatever it is, when you go to classrooms initially, or when you're starting to work with a group initially, first you're going to start out with formulating the rules together. For me, I could never, when you're in a classroom, there's a lot of push pin moving, you move the little ladybug down their chart. All of this, everybody's classroom does it a little differently, and I cannot keep up with all of that. That does not work for me. What works for me is to sit with the students and say, okay, these are our rules. We're not going to have many rules, and they're really basic rules, but they're things that we have to have in place for us to be able to learn effectively together. We are a community, caring and sharing. We're a community of learners. We're all responsible to each other to facilitate each other's learning versus establishing barriers to that learning, right? So what are some basic rules? You work with the students and you come up with those rules together. And then after you've got those rules, and just 5 or less, not long ones, and you have the students think about what are the most important aspects of a learning environment. We got to create an atmosphere of trust and respect, right? We don't talk while each other's talking. That goes back to that respect. If you're saying something, it matters to me what you're saying. I want to hear it, and I'm not going to talk over you, right? So you say, what matters in a learning environment? For us to be able to learn well together, what do we need? We need to listen to each other. We need to be respectful of each other. Whatever it is the kids come up with. And you try to help them get to some pieces that really do matter, right? Then you come up with appropriate consequences for inappropriate behavior. So if these pieces matter, we listen to each other, we respect each other, we don't talk over each other, whatever their rules are. Once they've come up with their rules, then you say, or they've come up with the elements of what makes a good learning environment. And you come up with rules that align with those elements. If it's respect each other, and we say don't talk while others are talking. Whatever it is, be a good group member, however you want to come up with whatever rules you come up with that are appropriate for your class. Then you have consequences for inappropriate behavior. And you ask the students, so what should be the consequences? If you do something wrong the first time, I give you the look. If you do something wrong twice, maybe I'll call you down. If it's something that is really wrong, way out of line, then you gotta leave. You're going to be sent out. Whatever the consequences are. You come up with them together as a class. You determine how should we reinforce good behavior. If you've done really well, if somebody does exceptionally well in class, then I'm going to tell the teacher when they come in how great that student was, right? But the whole point of the community of learners is to develop expectations, rules, and consequences together. And then the kids have a sense of ownership. And then those are the rules. For me, as a school counselor, it was when Miss D comes in the classroom, this is Miss D's class. This is our classroom together, right? And these are the rules we follow with Miss D. And we just follow those rules. And you really follow through with them. And what I will tell you is that the minute you make rules, the kid that's going to not follow your rule is going to be one of your best kids, one that is always a good kid. But you know what you've got to do? You have to enforce the consequences. Because the minute you don't enforce the consequences, you're sending the message to all of those students that our community rules that we develop together really don't matter. So we always follow through, okay? So don't make consequences you know you won't enforce. For me, I always knew the look, the calling you down, that gives you the opportunity to redirect twice, then you're out. I'm not going to get in a power struggle with anyone in the class. These are your options, right? Those are rules I knew I could enforce. The kids knew I enforced them. And together as a group, we were invested in each other and in our community. So to help students understand the rules or to remember them, maybe you develop a chart. Like looks like, sounds like, blah, 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 right? You post the rules somewhere or you bring them with you on your cart if you bring your cart in and out of the classroom if you're on an encore rotation. Maybe you sing, you rhyme, you rap the rules. Yeah, that was not it for me. You know that the rules just were what they were. We set them, this is it. But for some classes and for some school counselors, that's really a good fit. You got to do what works for you. Develop a method to remember collaboratively with the students. Now, we just talked about it. The rules were just really present, and mine didn't have any really good, cute way of doing this. It was just they were always present. This is it. You know, this is how we operate together, and the reason we operate together. Logic has always served me well. There may be situations where you feel like that's not the best fit for you, but for me, logic has always served me well. And so for me with the kids, I try to be very, very genuine and to say, this is why we do this. We do this because we're learning together, and we will facilitate learning for each other because we're a team. And what we want is the best for each other, okay? And if anybody's in a situation where they're not able to want that for someone in the class or for the rest of the class, that's fine, but they can't be in here and mess it up for the rest of the class. So structure for teaching guidelines and rules. You describe and demonstrate your desired behavior. You might explain why, give some context. You might model it. You might rehearse it, role play it, provide some guided practice. You always give feedback. I think that really, really matters. You always give feedback. When students are doing well, tell them. And don't just say, hey, great job. Say, this was really good. What you did today when you did this, that was really awesome. I saw you had something you really wanted to say and you started to speak out over top of John when he was talking, but you stopped yourself. That was awesome. And because of that, then I was able to come back to you later and give you time to speak by yourself. Proximity definitely matters. When you can cut down on most of your problem behaviors if you step over there near that child. If you're in a situation where you step over there near a student and they do not stop the behavior, you have a power situation going on with this student and you got to figure something else out. But for most students, you can step over there. Now, can you be walking back and forth to the student's desk all day? Absolutely not. So if you step over there and they stop it, but then you walk away and they start it back up, I've given you your warning, right? Like, then there we are. We are at the point we have to deal with it. If you feel like you're having a problem with classroom management, what do? First of all, you do not ignore it because problems with classroom management always just get worse. Like you have to take them on, figure it out, and deal with it at the time. So just think about categorizing it. This is a non-problem. Is this an issue just today? This is really, really not a problem. There was some other stuff going on with that class today. This is not about me. It's not about my relationship with them. There's some other stuff going on, and that's going to be resolved before I'm back in there the next time. Is it a minor problem? Do I seem to have a lot of talking? Am I having a hard time getting the students on track? Or on task? Or is it a major problem with limited scope and effects? Or is it an escalating problem? Is it one that is really growing tremendously quickly? You have to deal with these. And how do you deal with them? You might start by intervening in a minor manner, or moderate interventions, or extensive interventions. Extensive interventions might include school-based consequences, individual student contracts, definitely parent conferences. For me, always reach out to the parents. Engage with the parents. Make it clear to them what is expected for the student and to the student what's expected. But you can find a balance. If you're firm, fair, consistent, and confident, you'll totally be fine. If you